Welcome to sightomoon.com. I am Joseph Dumond, and you are listening to one of our newest ways of bringing a message out to you. We have a very special guest with us here tonight. Somebody recommended him to me in the comment section of my newsletter a few weeks ago. I went and called him up and had a talk with him. I had to determine if he was crazy or not. He's up in the mountains there in New Mexico, and he told me some stuff that sort of blew my mind. He's looking at patterns inside of cycles, the same as I'm looking at patterns inside of Jubilee cycles. And he's incorporated the Jubilee cycles into his patterns. And he came out and said some things about the virus and the stock market collapse this year. He said it last year or a few years ago. I forget which it is. He'll explain it to you here in a minute. But I want to introduce you to Cyrus Harding. Cyrus Harding of Texas. Shalom, sir. How are you?
Shalom. I'm doing excellent, sir. Thank you very much.
I want to thank you for joining us here today, and it's awesome. Tell us, tell the people who you are, because I don't know you real well. And you're a believer. You keep the Sabbath. You keep the holy days. You keep them according to the crescent moon.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, if you see Cyrus looking off to the side, that's because he's a little hard of hearing, and his wife is going to help him every once in a while when he's not sure what I just said. So go ahead, Cyrus. Tell us who you are. Introduce yourself a little bit.
Well, I'm a believer, and we study Torah every Shabbat. And I was I'm native-born Texan, but I was raised in South Louisiana, so I had to compensate. And growing up in Texas, I started to speak Spanish as a child. We moved to Louisiana, which is South Louisiana, which is a French-speaking state in the 1950s and early 60s. So I had to learn French. So somehow or another, our Creator gave me the ability to learn languages. So during the very end of the Vietnam War, I got my draft notice, went into the military, and I was selected for language training. I became a Vietnamese linguist and went to Southeast Asia. And after that, I applied for Hebrew language training. I was given Arabic and Aramaic. I worked in the Middle East for 4 years, 2 years there and 2 years TDY, which is a temporary duty assignment. So I worked as a linguist, a translator, interrogator, and also an analyst. And I even wrote a book for the National Security Agency on how to train analysts. And this was in the late 70s and early 80s. That I wrote the book, and it was incorporated into their study materials.
Cyrus, let me just interrupt you for a second. Just so that everyone else knows, we are recording this at the end of Memorial Day in the United States. This is the day they pay tribute to their fallen and they're currently serving military personnel around the world. And I just want to say thank you. I'm Canadian. We don't have this day here per se, but I want to thank Cyrus because the Americans do protect Canada a lot of the time, and we work together. So I want to thank Cyrus for his service. I want to thank all the military personnel for what they do, and today's COVID-19 nurses and doctors for doing what they're doing. And
Amen.
Thank you all.
Amen. Thank you.
So carry on, Cyrus. I didn't want to interrupt, but I wanted to get that in there, though.
Well, over the years, I've done a number of jobs. I was a project engineer, but I started Bible college at Washington Bible College in 1979. Dr. G.A. Miles was the director, the president, and he really put some things into my head that I've never been able to get out. Praise Yah. Okay, he got me started with the feast. With the tabernacle, and it's been a 40-plus year journey ever since he told me about if I would understand and study the feast of Leviticus 23, I would then know the full ministry or the full gospel of Yeshua. And I thought, well, that doesn't make sense. I don't get it. I was raised Southern Baptist, so that just went right over the top of my head. But over the years, Yah has granted me the grace, I guess the word chesed, to understand, and so I started looking for cycles, and this was after you had already started publishing things about cycles, but I didn't know anything about it. So I was talking about it. We call them our sons and daughters. Vaughn and I don't have children per se, but we have young people in their 40s and 30s and 40s and 50s that call us Papa and Mama. So anyway, one of our daughters said, Papa, you need to look at this man's research because you two sound like you're on the same page. And I thought, well, nobody's that crazy, okay, I'll look. So she sent me to citedmoon.com, and I saw this redheaded crazy guy talking about cycles. And it's like, what? This is unbelievable. And so you went through, and it's like, he's been looking over my shoulder or something. And it come to find out, you had been at this much longer than I had been. So anyway,
what year is this, Cyrus? What year did you find me?
This was 2013 when Tara put me on to what you had already done. See, I was afraid, Joe, that by looking at other people's work, that it would influence me in the wrong way. So I purposely avoided looking for other people. And several of we call them our daughters, several of our daughters said, no, you need to look here and you need to look there. And it's like, there's really people talking about this? Yeah, they're talking about it. So we researched it, and that's when we found you, and we found some others that were genuinely talking about the same things that we were. And it was like a huge weight came off of our shoulders because we felt like, we were the only ones in the bunch that was, a little bit off center.
I got to tell you, Cyrus, for the longest time, I thought I was crazy. I could not get anybody to understand this. The subject is so big, and I came down to Texas one of my first speaking trips, and I spoke for 8 hours in one little hotel room. 8 hours, and I never got it done. I never got it done. And the people came out of there, the mouths were open. They heard stuff they'd never heard before, but they didn't understand it yet. And it wasn't until 2013 when I got the entire feast site twice on the holy days, once every day during the week, that I got to explain everything in detail, which is we recorded. So that was the first time I've been able to do it. And yes, so I understand what you mean by thinking you're crazy.
Year that we heard it, yeah. And that was amazing that it was. See, I had been familiar with, I think his name was Dr. Joseph Nave, who, he had excavated various tombstones, I think in the 20s, maybe 30s of tombstones that gave the Shabbat cycle, and from Zohar. And there was also two Greek scientists, archaeologists that excavated the Greek tomb. There's a lot of Greek tombstones in Zohar. And having lived in Greece, I was a little bit more familiar with Greece than I was Hebrew, Greek. And so
hang on. You've just piqued my interest here because I didn't know we were going here. I've collected 30 tombstone information from Joseph Nave. And I've got them all. I've got them all correlated so that they all match the Jubilee cycles. There's two that don't match.
Right. Correct.
I've only got one with the Hebrew and Greek in it. So if you've got more with Greek on it, they give the sabbatical in relation to the sabbatical year or the temple destruction. I don't have them.
I can get them to you. I think there's 8, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Now I'm excited.
remember the Greek, as it gets older or into the Common Era, further into the Common Era, they use more and more Greek and less Aramaic. So what you end up with is the dates are not as good as the earlier dates, which are fresher from the memory of the destruction of the temple.
My dates go all the way up to 515 AD, from 285 AD.
Yeah, mine are in the 500s as well. And like I say, I think there's 8 that are in Greek.
I'm looking forward to this now. Okay, so
okay,
tell us more about the cycles that you've learned, and tell us about the cycles that you predicted back in November and February this 2019 and 2020.
Okay.
And tell us what they are, because I know what you're talking about, but the people listening, they don't have a clue what you're here for. They don't know what you did.
Okay. Well, I began. Well, I read a lot, and so I ran across Dr. Stephen Pitts, P-U-E-T-Z, who wrote a book, co-authored a book named The Unified Cycle Theory. And I thought, wow, this is really good information. So most of his source material came from Edwin Dewey. It's like the Dewey Decimal System. Mr. Dewey was paid by the Rothschild family to look for any natural reoccurring phenomenon that they could use to better their financial positions. So Mr. Dewey began going back through hundreds and hundreds of years of financial history, and he came up with what he called the super cycle. Now, I'm
familiar with that. I studied that one as well. And,
okay.
I could probably pull it off the shelf here in a minute.
Okay. Well, Mr. Dewey's work was the foundation of what I did. Now, the calculations, I've kind of modified some because I'm not interested in, per se, finance. I'm not looking to make money. So I don't care about finance, but I do care about how the moon affects the actions of people.
Okay, so are you now I'm going to be the devil's advocate here. I know what you're talking about, but I want the audience to hear this as well. So are you looking at like moon, tidal moons and stuff like that? The ocean tides? Is that what you're doing?
Well, that's only a portion of what the moon does, Brother Joe. Probably the most well-known is the ocean tides. And probably maybe even more well-known, or only second to the best known, is what it does to the monthly cycle of a woman. Okay?
The Nita cycle.
The Nita cycle, that's correct. A woman's body from the time of menarche, when she begins her first cycle, from the time of menarche to the time of menopause. Now, men means moon, okay? Menarche is the beginning of the moon's influence, and menopause is when it stops, okay? So in between that, you have what is called the menses, or the monthly, all right? So the influence of the moon is very well documented in every culture around the world, okay? Native American, Hebrew. In fact, the Native American believed that women needed to be separated from men during their monthly cycle because their spirit became stronger than a man's spirit. So they had to be put off to the side so they wouldn't overpower their husband's spirit. Okay. And period of separation, just like we find in the book of Leviticus. Okay. So anyway, this is what really got me to researching about the monthly cycle and the influence of the moon.
Okay. So let me put my foot in my mouth here for all these other guys that are sitting out there thinking, are you talking about the time when people go crazy because of the woman's menstrual cycle? For 2 weeks out of the month, when women go nuts all around the world? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not it. That's not it.
Okay.
When people go crazy is at a different time.
Okay, let me interrupt you because my wife works at a hospital, and when there's a full moon, she says, you know, it's a full moon tonight. I really don't want to go in because people are nuts in here. All the wackos come out tonight, and
that's correct.
That's correct. Well, I thought she just didn't want to work, and I thought I thought she was crazy.
No, she's being very reasonable.
Really? Okay.
That 3-day period, sometimes it's 3.5 days, sometimes it's 2.5 days, but that 3-day cycle when the moon is full, 98, 99, 100% full.
Now, just hang on. I'm going to interrupt you again. When the moon is full for 3 days, most people think it's only full for 1 day. It's full for 3 days. Why? That's because it's going around the earth as it's going around the sun. Can you explain that to people, please?
Well, yes, sir. At a point in time, it's all okay. This is balanced by gravity. It's like spinning something over your head. But here it is. At some point in time, they come into equilibrium, and the moon and the earth are moving in equilibrium. Okay, so it's the fact that the moon has kept pace with the movement of the earth. And so what you're seeing is, instead of 1 day of a full moon, you're actually seeing 3 days of a full moon as the moon begins to slingshot around the earth. Okay, so it's a matter of slowing down and then slingshotting around.
So just so everyone can understand, the moon is going around the earth. It takes 27 and some odd days for it to circle.
28.5 days, yes, sir.
Okay, so but we count our months as 29 or 30 days because as it gets around the one side of the earth and the earth is going around the sun, they're both going at the same speed for a point in time, and that's why it appears we've got 3 days of a full moon. Okay?
That's correct, yes, sir.
So I'm just trying to get everyone to understand this so that they know what you're talking about. I don't want to lose anybody here. This is important stuff that you're going to share with us today.
Okay. Well, during that period of time, now the most well-known effect that the moon has on the earth is gravity. Okay, it shifts the tides by gravity. If it's on one side of the earth, then the tides of the ocean are pulled in that direction, and the low tide on one side and the high tide on the other, and vice versa. As the moon moves, the gravity of the moon is actually shifting the weight of the water. Okay?
Now, a gallon of water, do you know how much a gallon of water weighs so everyone else can know that? It's
roughly about 10 pounds.
10 pounds per gallon of water. So
yes, sir.
If the moon is moving that many billion gallons of water.
Gallons, yes.
Yeah. So that's how much weight is being moved by the gravitational pull. Okay.
Yes, sir. That's correct. That is the most well-known aspect of the moon. However, there's another aspect of the moon that most people overlook, and it's the one I've been researching the most. The moon produces no light. It is simply in space a reflector or a big mirror of solar light. Okay?
Yep.
Light equals radiation. Okay? Light has a frequency, numerous frequencies, ultraviolet, infrared. So what the moon is doing for 3 days and 3 nights is reflecting a maximum amount of solar electromagnetic radiation at a period of time when the human brain thinks there should be none.
Say that again, please.
Okay. During the time of the full moon, the moon is reflecting a maximum amount of solar electromagnetic radiation upon the earth when the brain thinks there should be none or very little.
Okay, so I'm going to say it. You know, this is where we get the werewolves from and the crazy cycle, right?
Well, that's the crazy cycle. Yes, sir. That's when things. When things in the brain change. Now,
okay, I was sort of being smart here, but you're being serious.
I'm being serious. I'm being serious. Now, here's how I found that cycle. Okay. I kept having reoccurring technicolor dreams. I mean, it was like I was actually experiencing what was going on, but they were really, really weird dreams. So I kept trying to figure out why I was having these dreams. And then one day I stumbled upon a website called spaceweather.com that talks about solar radiation storms hitting the earth. So I went to this website and I began looking, and it just so happened the night before I had had these really strange technicolor dreams. And they said, well, you know, last night and tonight we're going to be hit with a proton storm from the sun due to a solar flare. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And then that night I had technicolor dreams again. And I thought, wait a minute, there's a connection here. What's the connection? So what I noticed that during these solar flares or coronal mass ejections, a maximum amount of solar, proton, and gamma radiation is being emitted by the sun. The human brain can sense these things, okay? Especially the Inuit people who live above the Arctic Circle in Canada and Alaska and other countries. Their brain is very focused in on these solar flare cycles. They understand them very well. That's why they were the first to sound the alarm that things in the sky hinged. So I began researching that and looking at it, and sure enough, there is scientific documented evidence that the human brain is affected by mass ejections of gamma waves, or gamma radiation, and protons. Okay, and during these coronal mass ejections and solar flares, that's what you have: proton streams and coronal and gamma waves.
So you're not just looking at the full moon; you're looking at the solar sunspot or solar
yes
off the sun. What do you call them?
Well, it is solar radiation, is what it is, because the moon has no inherent quality of its own other than mass. So gravity should be the only influence that it has. But because it's reflecting solar radiation, remember, radiation is not just light that we can see, but light that we can't see. And that includes the infrared, the ultraviolet, gamma waves, and proton streams. Okay, so the moon is bouncing these off at night. Now, you'll also notice during that same period of time, you can look up in the sky and see a full moon during the day. Why don't people go crazy during the day? Because the sun's out and they're already receiving that input from the sun, and their brain can balance it. But what we have is sensitivity to solar radiation at night, and this is what throws people off during those 3 days. Some have no capacity to balance it. Others do.
Let me ask you a question then, because the question that I'm thinking of is, if I'm inside my house, how are those solar rays going to affect me in my house?
Gamma radiation could affect you if you were 100 feet under the ground. Okay. So they're like neutrinos. Neutrinos penetrate down thousands of feet. Okay. Gamma radiation can do the same thing. You would have to get several hundred feet underground to get no gamma radiation from the sun. And protons are even more resilient than gamma radiation. So you're going to get some influence. Okay. So, you hear people talking about a tinfoil hat. Well, you'd have to have a lead hat to keep that radiation from penetrating into your head, even underground.
So what does all this mean? Like, so what? Who cares? Like, what does it mean? What have you found? Why have you got me so excited?
The world's richest people care. because it gives them an edge in business to know that people are going to make mistakes during these periods of time. This is what I call it, Brother Joe. It is the period of time when men, by 4-to-1, men are more likely to make a mistake or have the greatest propensity for making an error in judgment than any other time there is. Okay. And what time is that? That is the time between lunar eclipses and solar eclipses, going back 6 weeks either way. That is when you and I, as men, are most likely to make our biggest errors in judgment. You know, that's when men go out and they buy a jet ski, but they don't live near the water, or they go out and buy a 4-wheel drive, but they live in a city. They make errors in judgment. The wives just look at them and you know, they shake their head and say, "You think I'm crazy?" You know,
you've been looking in my backyard. Okay, so now, okay, it sounds really good. It sounds okay, but it also sounds like here's a crazy guy, and you've convinced me to be crazy with you.
Okay.
Where's your proof? Prove it. Prove what you're saying to be true.
Okay.
And in fact, that's the motto here at sideofmoon.com. Prove all things. So, you know,
right.
So prove it. Give me some.
Okay. I went back, and you would have to go to my website. I don't have the information right here in front of me. Go to my website, and I wrote an article, Keeping a Promise to You. And in that article, I outlined some things that I believe, going by the cycles, that were about to happen.
Now, hang on. When did you write this article? I read it. When did you write that?
September of 2019.
Okay, September of 2019. Ladies and gentlemen that are listening, write that down right now. September of 2019. This is when you wrote this article. And you go to this website here. It's right there in front of you, and you can read it. And I encourage you to go and read it. Okay?
I'm sorry, sinus problems, not the coronavirus.
That's okay.
I think it was September 19th. I'm not sure. But anyway, I wrote the article, and I outlined the period of time that I saw coming up that represented the greatest threat that I had ever seen before. And I've been tracking these cycles for a few years.
Now, hang on. Why was this one standing out so much?
Because it was the first global cycle I had ever seen. I'd never seen a cycle that was going to affect the whole world. Most of the time, the cycles are limited to a hemisphere, east, west, north, south, and even then you can shrink it in quite a bit by using the maps and stuff that you can get from NASA. You can shrink it in and say, okay, it's only going to affect the Pacific Ocean, or it's only going to affect North America, or it's only going to affect Africa. Now, this one was going to affect everybody.
How do you know it's going to affect which area? How do you know that?
Because that's the one that's going to have the greatest visibility of the eclipses.
Okay,
the area that gets exposed to the greatest visibility of the eclipses. So if, let's say, the lunar eclipse happens on, and I'll just make up a date, May 15th. And then let's say on May 31st is the solar eclipse. So who is going to be bombarded by the radiation during the eclipse? You see, the eclipse produces a different kind of radiation. Have you ever looked at a solar eclipse through a good viewer? You see there's a corona around the moon that's darkening the sun. That corona is not normal radiation. It's a very high band of radiation. Okay, so this is what. Yes, sir.
I'm going to pull up a chart here because what you're saying is very interesting, and I want people to sort of see it. And you can use this chart to describe what you're talking about.
Okay.
So here's a chart. This is, I think this is a lunar eclipse that I'm talking about here. and or maybe no, this is a solar eclipse. It's over top of India. So
Okay.
What are you talking about here? Explain that again using this map here.
Okay, what I would do at this point is I would overlay the lunar eclipse with the solar eclipse and find out where the two merge. That is going to be the point of the greatest impact. Okay.
Okay.
Now, what happens is sometimes you get, instead of 15 days, you get a lunar eclipse 30 days out from a solar eclipse. Okay. Or maybe even, of course, if you go much further than that, it really doesn't have much effect. It's when they start getting tighter. Instead of being just a couple of months apart, they're just a couple of weeks apart. That intensifies the impact. So when you overlay the solar eclipse with the lunar eclipse, then the area that is impacted by both eclipses will receive the greatest impact. And back in when I wrote the article in September of 2019, this was going to be global. Everybody was getting hit by both eclipses, and I'd never seen that before. It was really weird. Now the one that
the solar eclipse and the lunar eclipse you're talking about, when did they happen?
I would have to go back and look, Joe. I don't really have it with me right in front of me. I would say that it would probably be somewhere around November 30th and December 15th, somewhere in that area. If you can go back and look at that. I don't have that.
I didn't have that chart ready here. I can go to NASA. Oh, maybe I do have that chart in NASA. Hang on. Let me see if I got that. Where are you? Where are you? Right here. NASA. And we're looking at, what are we looking at? 2019, July, January 2019. This is a lunar eclipse. Is that what you want? Or you want the solar eclipse?
Okay. Both. Can you put up both?
I can do one at a time.
Okay. So what do you stop?
Let me share
there. Joe, stop where you are right there. What you're looking at is you're seeing all of Africa, most of Europe, especially the Mediterranean part of Europe, Middle East, Southern and Southeast Asia, to include India, Indonesia, and Australia. Okay. That's what you're looking at in that eclipse.
Okay. So that one, hang on. That one is, no. That one is where is this? This is June 6th. This is the one coming up. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So that's the one coming up. Let me pull up the one here. I got too many screens going on here. Stop sharing. Pull up this screen. Share screen. Application window. That one. This one. Okay. So there is the. Where'd you go?
I can't really see that one well.
You can't see that one well?
No, sir, I can't.
This is the lunar eclipse from what date is this? January 21st, 2019.
Okay.
That's January 20th. That's over. That's not the one I want though, but that's a good one for your example.
Okay, it's a good one for my example. The two areas, or the one big area that was hit in the solar eclipse, if that was the one before, is Africa and Europe. But if you look, you'll see that most of Asia is blocked out. What you do see, it is North and South America, the Atlantic and the Pacific region. Remember also too, that the previous chart that you showed was real heavy on Southeast Asia and the Pacific area. Okay. So there is Pacific region got a great deal of radiation from both eclipses. Now we see if this is the lunar eclipse, we see North and South America get a big dose of radiation from the lunar eclipse. And then also going back to the solar eclipse, we saw Europe, Africa, and Asia getting a dose of radiation from that eclipse. You can't have a period of time when there is no moon in the sky. You can't see the moon, but the moon is still there, okay? So the effects of the gravity of the moon are always there. It's the electromagnetic radiation that is only an influence in the lighted moon, okay?
Like a full moon.
Well, no, not just the full moon, but when there's light emanating from the moon, you can see that the moon is there. And if you use your imagination, you can actually see the dark part of the moon that's not illuminated. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So
okay.
You can see that, but there's still a moon there. Even if it's dark, it doesn't go into hiding. It doesn't go into a dark place somewhere. There's just no solar radiation bouncing off of it.
Okay. Now, when I was talking, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
When I was talking to you after I read your newsletter and I called you up and I talked to you, you told me something else. You told me about the perigee and those cycles. Now, can you explain them a little bit?
Well, being in perigee, being in apogee, you're being farther or closer.
And perigee is closer to the Earth, and apogee is farther away from the Earth.
Farther away, correct. So you're either you're being an increased intensity of the moon. Okay, that's why people associate big happenings with the blood moon or the super moon, because that's when the moon is closest to the Earth. So that's when the Earth is getting the maximum dose of solar radiation being reflected off of the moon.
When the moon is closer during a full moon, it's getting more radiation.
That's correct. Hence,
and so what you're saying is more of the crazy cycle on people.
That's correct. That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Okay. So that's how the perigee and the apogee figure into this, is that you may have a full moon, but it may be slightly further away than some other full moon. Whereas the blood moon or the super moon is much closer, so you get a much greater effect, both in solar radiation and in gravity. Okay. That go back to it, and you can turn around and I've been married 48 years, and I can look and say that at points in time, my wife had very heavy cycles and very light cycles. Okay, and if you get to looking at this, the further away the moon is, the woman's cycle tends to be lighter and lesser in days, whereas the closer it is heavier and perhaps even longer. Okay, so there's a direct correlation between the moon, the cycle of a woman that's premenopausal, and also solar radiation. The greater the closer the moon is, the greater the radiation being, I shouldn't say it that way. It's always going to reflect the same amount. The intensity that we receive when the moon is closer, like a blood moon or a super moon, okay? What we used to call harvest moons or hunter moons. At that point in time, that is the maximum amount of the intensity of the light. Whereas when the moon seems more distant and not as bright or not as big, even though it's full, that's less intense reflection of solar radiation.
Okay, so let's go back to September. You wrote this article, and you said something was going to happen starting in November of 2019, and
Around November
concluding,
14th.
yeah, and concluding by, I think you said February 24th of,
Yes, sir.
Of 2020.
Yes, sir.
What did
That's
you
correct.
say? What did you say?
Well,
And what did you say, and how did you base it?
well, I overlapped the eclipses and followed the progression of the eclipse across the globe. That's why I said it was going to be a global cycle, not just a regional or a hemispheric type cycle. It was going to be global because it was spread out over the entire globe. And I said that we would be going into it on November 14th and come out February 24th. It would be building, and this was a very intense cycle. So I said that we would see things that would come out of Southeast Asia, China area. And
Starting in November.
Yeah, starting in November. And I thought, this is my interpretation, and I was wrong. But I thought that it was going to cut off the flow of oil. I did not know it was going to cut off the demand of oil. I've never seen that before. How do you postulate something you've never seen before? So anyway, it affected oil, but in the opposite way. So I was anticipating the flow of oil would be severed, would be cut.
Because that's based on your own understanding and analysis of geopolitics.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay.
I mean,
so
looking at
Cyrus, I just want to make sure this isn't an angel telling you that oil is going to be cut off. This isn't the moon telling you. This is Cyrus looking at this stuff and saying, it's got to be oil.
Yes, sir. Okay. That's correct. What I was looking at, if both shadows overlapped over the Middle East. So what did the Middle East have in common? Well, it's got, basically 38, 40% of the world supply of oil being shipped every day. So I figured that the one thing that would take place would either be a regional war, which would cut off the flow of oil, or the flow of oil would be cut off just for whatever reason. But I honestly anticipated a regional war.
And again, just so the viewers can know, what happened in November in the heavens?
Well, we had a planetary alignment that took place in conjunction with I think it was the lunar eclipse. I may have that backwards, but I think it was the Earth was in line with Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and I want to say Neptune, or it might have been Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. But it was a very big planetary alignment that took place during that period of time.
So we got to pause here just for a moment, Cyrus, and just explain to people, because now that the typical mind can say, well, these guys are now getting into astrology, and they've jumped off the deep end, and there's no water. They're out of their minds. We can't be doing that. And so what I've done is I prepared a newsletter, and I'm going to go to that now.
Okay.
And I'm going to share with everyone just a few scriptures, and get out of here. Get out of here. And I want people to know where the prophets got their information from. So we read this in, where is it? We read this in Psalms, and hopefully I can get there real quick, because in Psalms 19, okay? The heavens declare the glory of God, and the expanse proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. And that is such a profound statement when you understand this. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard. What's not heard? How are they communicating to us? Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tabernacle for the sun, and he comes forth as a bridegroom from his canopy. He rejoices as a strong man to run a race, going forth from the end of heavens, and its course is to their ends, and there is nothing hid from its heat. What this is talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is the stars, the planets that we can see going around the earth, and the constellations. So what we're talking about here tonight is not astrology.
No.
The greatest prophets in your Bible look to the heavens to understand the plan of salvation. Okay. Isaiah, John, not the Baptist, the Apostle John.
John the Apostle, yeah.
That's right. So, and I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to give you an example. Now, this is my newsletter for next week. Here's Revelation 12, verse 1. And there appeared a great sign in the heavens, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon was under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars was on her head. So what you see here is the constellation of Virgo. And there's the sun. It is now set. So this sun is set. And over here on the left, by the telephone pole, I have the moon, which is now the first crescent of the moon that you can see. So I've backed it up a little bit, a few more hours. And there it is, again, the same description that John just talked about. This happens to be the day that the Messiah was born in 3 BC. It says -2 here because it's using Julian dates, which counts the year 0 as a year. So it's actually 3 BC. That's the day Messiah was born, September 11th, 3 BC.
That's correct.
And this is the constellation that John was talking about, and that's what he's talking about. And Isaiah talked about the same thing in Isaiah 7:14. So now we go down a little bit further, and then John talks about another sign that was seen in the heavens. And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on his head. And his tail drew a third of the stars in heaven, and cast them onto the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, being about to bear, so that he should, that when she bears, he might devour her child. What's this talking about? There's the woman Virgo in the same constellation I just showed you, with the moon below her feet and the sun radiating through her whole body. The 12 stars around her head are part of the constellation. What's the lion called? I forgot the lion.
Leo.
And there's the serpent that John's talking about that takes up 1/3 of the sky, and 1/3 of the stars he takes with him. That's what he's talking about. Here's another one. This is the one Yeshua is talking about. Luke 10:18. And he said to them, I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning. And there's Satan, the dragon, falling to the earth. And this happens, you can see it every night. You know, it's the constellation of Draco. So I'm showing this to you just so that you understand that Cyrus and I are not crazy in what he's talking about here. Okay? So these are things that their Bible's talking about. Now, I got more examples in there that you can go look at. That'll be in the newsletter this week. This is a teaser introduction here, but I wanted to get Cyrus on here to explain to you what he saw. He thought the oil was going to dry up through a war in the Middle East, based on the overlapping of the lunar cycle with the lunar eclipse with the solar eclipse that happened in November, December, and January of this past year, January 2020. Okay, so what happened? Now, you've explained the beginning. Get to the end of February 24th. What did you see happening then, or what did you think was going to happen then?
Well, as it went through, and I had 2 days for a possible ending date. I calculated it 3 times and came up with February 24th. And I calculated it 4 times and came up with February 14th. And then part of the way through the cycle, I realized, wait a minute, February 24th was the right date. So what I do, Joe, and I do this for a reason. I go to a website called usawatchdog.com. And the man there is an excellent journalist. I have no affiliation with him whatsoever. But I leave comments there about the cycles. And the reason I do that is because there's no way I can change anything on his website. You see, I can edit an article and change things on my website, but I can't change anything on his website. So when I leave a comment about troubling times coming or possible times to be prepared or things like that, it's because I know that there's no way I can doctor those comments. And so people can't say, well, you changed your comment. I did not. So I've used that technique over the last about 4 years. And the 2 cycles before this cycle that we just left, November 14th to February 24th, the 2 cycles prior to that, the thing that scared me was I was right. See, what I'm looking at is the period of time when men have the greatest propensity to make a mistake. That doesn't mean they're going to. Okay, it just means that they could, and if they do, most likely it's during this period of time. Like I said, that's when guys go out and buy, bass boats and they don't fish, or they buy shotguns and they don't hunt. And their wife's just looking at them, shaking her head, and, going, "You call me crazy." So that is the time when men do things that they can't actually account for. So the 2 previous cycles I had nailed perfectly, and that's what scared me.
What were those 2 previous cycles?
Well, one of them was the Christmas crash of December 2018. And I put a comment on Greg's website during an interview with Jim Sinclair and Bill Holter in 2018, during August, July sometime, saying be careful of the period of time between December 22nd and January 7th or 8th. I don't remember exactly what the date was, because this is a period of time of financial uncertainty. And I mean, that stood out. So you should be able to go back to that comment. Greg has archives. You can go back to that comment, look for the Jim Sinclair, Bill Holter interview in the summer of 2018. It's also the first time I mentioned the cycle coming up in November of 2019. Okay. That I thought that was going to be a very bad cycle. So anyway, that's what I use as my proof text, or basically people can't say that I made it up, because it's there and I have no power to change it whatsoever. It's somebody else's website.
Okay.
And so I do this.
Sorry. What are you saying is coming up next? And when?
Well, we're going to be, well,
and
okay.
Where?
I outlined what and where and when in my my article, cycle update, I think it is, cycle update and what may lie ahead, I think is what I call it.
And you can get that article at the website here at the bottom of the screen. Yes,
sir. It's about 3 or 4 down from the top, and it's fairly recent. And this is a complex cycle. This is nothing easy like the other one. This one has 2 phases and 6 stages. It builds up to kind of a mid-level crescendo of 50%, and then it jumps up to 75%, back down to 50%, and then tapers off to almost nothing by August 18th, I think it is.
August 18th, 2020.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Starting about May what?
No, it started April 23rd, plus 23rd. Or minus 2 days. I always tell people plus or minus 2 days. I go by the sliver, whether I see it or not, because this is cloudy weather time in Texas, basically thunderstorms every day. So I look at when there's a good perhaps citable sliver, and that's when I began my count. But it may go 1 or 2 days either side of that. Okay, and then when I look at the end of the cycle, I look at the dark of the moon. Okay, so what we have is a very long cycle stretching from April 23rd to about April 18th. I think, and this is my personal perception, I think that the full effect of the cycle will be over somewhere around the 9th or the 10th.
The 9th or the 10th of what?
August.
Of August.
Yes, sir. But I believe that in looking at the phase of the moon doesn't go into the dark phase until I think it's the 18th. Okay, you'll read the article and you'll see it.
Okay.
But I expect that after the 9th or 10th of August, the power of the cycle will begin to drop off quickly. So some cycles are very strong right up to the last day. Other cycles jump up quickly and taper off real fast. So you just have to balance these things, and it really is a matter of overlaying one cycle on the other. Sometimes they're a perfect match, and that means one region is going to be affected. Sometimes they're not. They're side by side.
Okay, so let me just recap for everyone here what you're talking about. You're talking about from April 23rd to August 18th, and you're basing this period of time on the perigee of the moon coming close to the Earth, the full moon. We also have it during this time. We have two lunar eclipses and one solar eclipse.
That's correct.
We have a lunar eclipse on June 9th, I think it is, and another one on July 5th. And then we have a solar eclipse on June 21st. Did I get that?
That's
right?
Correct. That's about right.
Okay.
Roughly. And
you're saying that with all these things combined together, the crazy cycle when people are, invest in buying bass boats this coming period of time in the summer. Okay, so that's the when, and that's the why, and who's the who? Where's the crazy going to act out?
It's going. I outline in the article that one of the areas that's going to be affected during the whole cycle. I mean, it's going to shift back and forth, but there's a couple of areas that are going to be affected for the full duration of the cycle. One is Europe. Okay, Europe will receive a maximum amount of this cycle. Southeast Asia, primarily Australia and Indonesia, but Southeast Asia, the South China Sea area. Okay, so that's going to have a big impact.
And what are you seeing? What are you seeing? Are you seeing, is this war? Is this oil? Is this a run on gold? Is this earthquakes? What are you seeing? No,
I'm glad you mentioned earthquakes, because I do see earthquakes.
Again, this is based on your experience, your understanding of what causes these things, right?
Yes, sir. Now, let me give you a name. I sent it to you in email. David Nabhan. David Nabhan is a retired high school physics teacher from, I think, Los Angeles, California, who got very, very accurate at predicting earthquakes 6 months to a year out. And the way he did that was looking at lunar cycles. And people started listening to David Nabhan rather than the USGS. And so the USGS had to come up and vilify him to make him look bad, but it didn't change the accuracy of his predictions. Okay, he is now retired. I think he lives in Vermont or New Hampshire. He moved to the other side of the country because he saw a lot of trouble coming in for the West Coast. And I believe that he was right. I believe there is trouble around the corner for the West Coast.
The West Coast of the United States?
Yes, sir. Yes.
And earthquake-wise?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Okay.
Earthquake, right. And I believe also volcanic activity. We may see volcanic activity as a result. I'm guessing this is what I'm going based on what I see with the cycle. I can't give you scientific proofs or anything else. I'm just using my experience at looking at these cycles, that you might see earthquakes in California, then you might see earthquakes in Japan. You might see earthquakes in, well, we had some very serious earthquakes take place just a couple of days ago in Nevada. And there may be some take place in Indonesia. They're going to be here one day, and they'll be over there on the other. They'll be on the west coast of the United States or the west coast of South America. Then they may be on Indonesia or Japan or China. And we also have several volcanoes erupting at this current time, about 40.
Okay. I've had you on here, just a little bit over an hour now, I think. An hour or so.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep you too long, but there's I'm just going to jump into it. You don't know what I've been saying is coming this year, do you?
No, sir. I don't get a time to read your newsletters are real long. I get them, but I just don't have time to read them.
I understand. And this is a good thing, because what I'm trying to establish is that I have not influenced you to say any of this for this time of year. No,
sir. I have no idea what you've seen coming or anything like that.
Now, the other thing, are you keeping Pentecost next Sunday?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
I've kept Pentecost 30 days ago.
Right.
Okay. So I'm on the early schedule this year.
Right.
And I'm not trying to pick a bone. I'm just stating that difference. What I've noticed, and I've shared my newsletter with you so you can see what I'm saying and see if I was pretty much correct in what you're telling us. And
yes,
you're agreeing that it's fairly accurate?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Except for the FBI part, which I got to change that.
Right.
But for me, and the people that are following the early start of Passover this year, the 4th or the 17th of the 4th month is a historical date in Jewish, not mythology or mysticism, but Jewish history. A number of things happened at that time. That was the day that Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments and saw the golden calf and broke them on the 17th day of the 4th month. For me, that is, no, I've lost it, as June. Let me see if I can pull that up here. There it is, 3rd month. That'll be the June 9th or 10th this year. And that happens to be just a few days after the lunar eclipse on June 5th, 6th.
Yes, sir. That's probably real close to the point of maximum intensity of that cycle.
Yeah, and it's just a week and a half before the summer solstice and the solar eclipse of July or June 20th, 21. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, that's the 17th of the 4th month. And so for me, the 9th of Av in the 5th month will land on, and I'm just scrolling down to my other calendar here. Again, this is in my newsletter for this weekend. The 9th of Av is on June 30th. And we have, June 30th and July 1st, with July 4th and 5th being the next lunar eclipse. And I'm looking at all of this and I'm saying, wow. And here's the thing, Cyrus, that you got me so excited about in all of this, and you coming to this maximum time period that we're coming into, is that I have been saying since 2005 that at Pentecost in 2020, based on the Daniel 9 prophecy of the 70 weeks, which is 70 Jubilee cycles, that in the middle of this 70th Jubilee cycle, which is 2020, a whole lot of bad stuff was going to happen. I was focused on the war part of it.
Right.
But in that same curse of Leviticus 26, it says plague and famine.
That's correct.
And they're already talking about worldwide famines now of 135 million more people being added to that list by the end of the year, starting in 3 months' time, which is, again, July, August. But my 2,300-day count, originally I thought it was May 31st at Pentecost. We redid it here when we moved ahead early, and I now understand the 29, 30-day month schedule better, the Adar Bet leap years better. And because of the Adar Bet, and this year we're out of sync with a lot of people this year, I could not figure it in the future like I was so confident before. But anyway, long story short, we did a teaching on that a few weeks ago. My 2,300-day count that leads up to when the two witnesses begin to work begins sometime around July 5th. And you didn't know that when I brought you on the show today.
No.
And that's why I'm so excited to have you on here and say all the stuff that you've said. The coming together of all these things at the same time has got my radar up and watching for everything. What it's going to be, I don't know, but I believe there's going to be something that's going to be like the shot heard around the world to start the American Revolution. This is going to be a shot or something that, just like the pandemic, for me, it was declared on March 10th, which was my Passover day.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge signal. The week before we kept Shavuot, the UN was saying there's going to be a famine. The week after, meat processing plants in North America, Canada, and the United States were shutting down. What's going to happen here this July, this June? I don't know.
I don't either, Brother Joe. What I tell people is, I think what's coming is going to make us forget about the coronavirus.
Say that again.
All. I believe that what is coming during the midst, the high point of this cycle is probably going to make us forget about the coronavirus for a while.
And the high point, you said, is 75% intensity. What date is that about?
Okay,
I can pull it up here. I wrote it down too, but
I'm looking at June 14th to July 4th.
Yes.
That would be the peak intensity, July 14th, July 4th. Okay. Now, let me qualify. I'm giving you dates. There's no magic window it opens and no magic door closes. This is just what I see as being that period of time, plus or minus 2 days, that these things will, appear, should I say, or that intensity will appear, because it's just like getting out and looking for the sliver. You've got to watch. You've got to watch.
You said phase 4 is June 14th to July 4th, and it's about 75%. So you're expecting maximum intensity. Now, what I saw when you said that date, this flag went off in my head, and I'd like to get your feedback on it. The United States right now is coming out of lockdown. So here we are, the last week of May. We're about to start into June. The month of June is what in the United States? What's the big deal about the month of June? It's LGBTQ month.
The gay parade or whatever they call it. Yeah.
The pride parades all over North America and in San Francisco, right? San Francisco and Toronto, Canada, where I'm from, are the sort of like the #1 places in the world. And I also heard that Jerusalem is also like one of the #1 spots.
Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv. I'm sorry. You're right.
The gay capital of the world.
That's right. So Toronto, San Francisco, Tel Aviv. And here we are. That's coming out this month when everyone's allowed to come out of lockdown. And I'm not saying nothing bad about them. You know, I'm just saying the timing in all of this is suspicious.
It is, yes. Now, let me just throw, we have not talked about locust swarms. The new swarm that's just now hatching is much bigger than the one that took place a month ago. Now they're worried about another. Okay, so these swarms are even showing up in countries like Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, places where they don't normally have locust swarms. The last locust swarm went all the way to the border, western border of China. So these swarms are, and if you've never been in a locust swarm, if it's green, they're going to eat it. There was an avocado tree. Avocado trees have real bright green bark, and the locust ate the green off of my avocado tree. This was a number of years ago, but if it's green, they're going to eat it. So if you've never seen the destruction left by a locust swarm, it's just mind blowing. It really is. And they're carried by the predominant winds, and that will be from west to east. It's going to go from, just like it did before, it's going to go from Africa to the Middle East to Western Asia, and then into Southeast Asia. And it may get further this time than it did last. But one of the things that people are missing, Brother Joe, is the locust swarms got as far as China. The H5N1, I believe it's in Hubei province, which is right next to Hunan, which Wuhan is the capital city of, where Wuhan virus broke out. Well, the H5N1 bird flu broke out almost at the same time. Okay. America's in judgment, but China is too, because they're going to pay a heavier price than we are initially. Okay. But no one who sins is going to get free. No nation that sins is going. This is global judgment. This is not picking on China and not picking on the United States. We're entering a period of global judgment. And I know people don't like to hear that, and they often get mad at me when I say that. But by what I believe, I think the world entered judgment in 1996, and it's just going to intensify. And here's
why. Hey, stop. I got to stop. Why did you say 1996?
Well, that's what I believe was the end of the last Jubilee cycle and the beginning of this cycle, which is the last Jubilee cycle.
You are 100% correct. And again, this is the first time you and I have talked this long. I talked to you maybe an hour on the phone a couple of weeks ago. We're in agreement.
Yeah, I see that we are in agreement. I'm bringing one thing to the table with me, and I hate to talk about it, but in 1978, late 78, early 79, a colonel in the Russian or the Soviet KGB defected, came to the United States and brought the whole plan of the Soviet Union with him as for when they were going to attack and how they were going to attack the United States. And he said that the Soviet Union would enter into military, financial, and political agreements with China. And they would use those agreements to get China to help them attack the United States. And of course, he added that when they got through, they were going to attack China. But all that, he said, would take place in the year 2020. So that's why I have this feeling that I think we're going to be seeing a period of war in the near future. It may start as a regional war, but I think, like regional wars often do, they grow just like a forest fire.
Yeah. So, and just another thing that I agree with you about the war part. I don't agree with you about the Russia and China part. I believe that the Middle East is going to attack Europe. I believe that Europe is going to retaliate big time and put down all this Islamic jihadist problems that they've been having and the migration problems they've been having.
Mhm.
And then when the United States and their allies step in to protect their assets in the Middle East, I believe they're going to get a surprise attack. And I've been just doing a study today, and again, this is a newsletter for later on, about the 14th of the 17th of Av. I mean, the 17th of the fourth month. And the weeping of Rachel and the Jeremiah 31. And my head is exploding with all this information I'm getting just today alone. Rachel was crying, but I can't prove this, but I believe it, but I can't prove it, that Joseph was sold into captivity on the 17th of the fourth month.
Well, that would be yeah.
Again, but who's Joseph? Joseph is the United States, or Ephraim and Manasseh, the United States and the United Kingdom. And they're about to be double-crossed here. And I don't know how exactly, and I don't understand it all, but I'm watching everything. And I think this is a momentous year for us to be alive at this time and to understand prophecy as little as we do. But to understand it enough, looking through the glass darkly, as Paul says, is exciting and terrifying and humbling at the same time. And
you're absolutely right.
The thing that I loved about you, Cyrus, is that there's no errors, and you said that we have to repent, and it's judgment on the world. And you're right, it is judgment on Israel was to take that message to the world, and they did not.
That's correct.
And judgment on the house of Israel first, but at the same time, it's on the rest of the world too. And we are in very dangerous times, and all of us need to study our Bible, and learn to know Jehovah. And time's up for playing games. Time's up for playing religion. We don't have time anymore for this stuff. So I want to thank you for sharing what you did today, and for getting me excited about, because when I said July 5th for the start of the 23rd day, man, that's so far out of nowhere. Like, why would I pick that date? Then I realized there was a lunar eclipse at that time. It's going to be a dark moon. And again, in Jewish mythology, there's a dark moon in June 4th and July 5th. A dark moon represents famine.
Yes, sir.
A blood moon represents war. We've had four blood moons on the high holy days: 2014, 2015, Passover and Sukkot. 2016, again, I kept it early that year, and we had dark moons on the holy days. 6 in a row. And now, I wasn't looking at July 5th for anything until just a few months ago when I redid my calculations. And, well, what does that mean? And then I come across you, and you blew me away. So have you got any more you want to add to all of this?
Well,
or
I gave you some scriptures, and I just want to have people just, in some point in time, just look over Genesis 1 through 13. And when you get to 14, there 1 through 113, there is no light other than the esteem of Jehovah. Okay? It is on the 14th verse, where on the fourth day, when he creates the lights in heaven. Okay? Now, that's how we know there was a sliver that day, because he did not create the dark of the moon. He created the light of the moon. Okay? So we have the sun and the sliver being created on the fourth day. Now, when you look, what was it? Acts 3:21, I believe it is, I gave you.
Yep.
Okay. What does it say there? Whom heaven truly needs to receive until the times of restoration of all things. What's going to be restored? The lights are going to be restored. Where do we see that? We see that in Revelation 21, verses 22 and 23. And there is no temple in the New Jerusalem, for Jehovah the Almighty is in his temple, even a lamb, And the city had no need of the sun nor of the moon that they might shine in it. Okay, why? Because the esteem of the Father and the sun and the moon, what does the moon do? The moon reflects the light of the sun. What does what does the sun do? The sun always points the way back to the Father. Okay, Yeshua always said, I did not come in my name, I came in my Father's name. He's always pointing us back to the Father, just like the moon is pointing us back to the sun. We see Yeshua pointing us back to the Father. Okay, so when New Jerusalem is here, there'll be no need for the sun nor the moon because they have the Father and the Son.
Very good. If any of you are there in the chat room, if you got any questions you want to fire off there, fire them off now, real quick. Let me know that you're going to send me a question, and we'll put it out here for you. Other than that, I think we've got some more people excited about what's coming up here. It's going to be watching the heavens, just like I am.
That was Yeshua's message over and over. Watch.
Yeah, and what I was going to say something here about the scripture you just quoted. Which one was it? Acts. So the restoration of all things. I've always said that the restoration of all things, including what you just said, the Sabbath. The Sabbath started to be restored with the Seventh-day Adventists in the late 1800s. The holy days, I say the Worldwide Church of God, and the name with, I forgot their names, the two gentlemen at the same time back in the 1930s. And we started, they started to know that God had a name, Yahweh. And since then, I've now believed that his name is Jehovah. If you don't, that's fine. Okay. We got his name. We got his holy days. Now we got the crescent moon. We got the holy days according to the crescent moon. And we got the barley to begin the year. All these things that they used to do, the restoration of all things. And now we got the sabbatical years. And we know when the Jubilee years are. The restoration of all things. And this is such a pivotal comment, scripture here. Okay. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, just quickly, I got a question, let me know right now, or I'm going to say good night. Okay, I'll post this one here. I'm not sure. Maybe you can make sense of this one. Actual biblical cosmology perspective would probably do wonders for these calculations. The heliocentric nonsensical model is nowhere described in any scripture that I've come across yet. I'm not sure what he's talking about. Do you?
Well, that is basically the Greek way of looking at the stars. The Greek way of looking at the heavens would be the heliocentric model. Okay. We see through the prophets, we see through the Psalms that, in fact, the names of the I can't even remember now what you call them, of the various, like the Virgo and constellations have completely different names in Hebrew because they represented different things to the Hebrews than they did the Greeks. Okay, so there's been a kind of everything's gone toward the Greek way of looking at the heavens rather than the Hebrew way of looking at the heavens. And when we see these things in Scripture, we have to look at it as a Hebrew mindset rather than a Greek mindset.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Cyrus, I don't see no questions here, and I want to thank you. I think I found a new brother, someone I can love, and you're probably just as cranky and miserable as I am in our old age, and will tell me off as quickly as anyone else will. But I love that. Can I ask you to close this out with prayer, please? Would you mind doing that?
Yes. No, sir. I would not mind doing that. Abba, Father, we thank you for this opportunity that we can come together as a family, your family. We thank you for the revelation of your word, your son. We thank you for all the many things that you've given us as a gift, because you also gave us the love for the truth. And without the love of the truth, we would not know any of this. But you have it right here in your word. And we thank you for showing us these revelations of your word. And the deeper we dig, the more we learn, the closer we grow to you and your son, the Messiah. Thank you for this. We thank you for each and every one that had an interest in what was being discussed, because the world doesn't care about what we're discussing, but your children do. Thank you for that, Father. Be with us as we go about our daily lives, that we will be an example to others. They will want to know what makes us different. They will want to understand your word. And we ask this, and we pray this, and we earnestly seek this in your set apart name and that of your son, Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen and amen.
Thank you, Cyrus. Thank you so very much for this. And again, thank you for your service to your country and to ours, and to all the other military vets out there. Again, this is being recorded on Memorial Day. And I did not want to do this because I wanted to respect your time to spend with your memories and your brothers that served with you. But you said that this is something they all needed to hear. So, oh, hang on. We got a question here. Let me see. Do you both agree that the mark is a spiritual mark, that Sunday is the mark of the beast system? Can you want me? Can I take that one?
Sure, go ahead.
We have, if you go to citedmoon.com, we have a number of articles there, and we show you what the mark is. Jehovah's mark is how you figure out the mark of the beast. You have to figure out what God's mark is. And God's mark is the sign on your hand, and it's repeated over and over throughout the scriptures, and the mark on your head. What you do with your hand is you stop working on the Sabbath.
That's great.
And you stop thinking about making money on the Sabbath. You start thinking about how to get to know God, how to get to know Jehovah and study his word. So that's the mark in your forehead and the mark in your hand. So that's God's mark. And if that's God's mark, and the Sabbath is his sign, and the holy days are his sign, and the sabbatical years are his sign, then the logical conclusion is anything else is Satan's mark.
Amen.
So, you know, Sunday worship, Christmas, Easter, Halloween, Ramadan, Purim, Hanukkah, all these things that are not found in Leviticus 23. And I said them all. Whatever's not there. So that's a whole can of worms, but that's another debate for another subject. But start off, if you don't know that the Sabbath is the holy day, go and read Ezekiel 20. And it over and over, 2020. All the things that, this is my sign. This is my sign. This is my sign. It's a Sabbath. It's a Sabbath. It's a Sabbath. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And Jehovah be with you all and keep you. And I hope to be doing more interviews like this with more people. We have a number of people already lined up. We're just trying to get them organized to do this. So this is the new venue for citedmoon.com to do this. And Cyrus, you're the first one to do it. Let me post your website here again so people can write it down and then go read this article that you wrote. And I encourage them to do that. And shalom, everybody. Shalom, Cyrus.
Shalom.